My name is Alejandra Conley, and I was 22 years old the day my family laughed while I was struggling to stay afloat in a freezing lake. It was supposed to be our annual family reunion, the kind people romanticize, the kind that looks wholesome in photos where everyone claims nothing matters more than family. We held it every year at the lakeside cabin that had been in my mother's family for generations, a place with peeling white paint, warped wooden steps, and a dock that groaned under the weight of too many people pretending to be happy. The air smelled like pine needles, charcoal smoke, and cheap beer. Relatives I barely knew wandered around with red plastic cups, laughing too loudly, hugging too long, catching up on lives they didn't actually care about. Kids ran barefoot across the grass. Someone had music playing softly from a speaker on the porch. From the outside, it looked like warmth, tradition, belonging. For me, it felt like walking back onto a stage where I already knew my lines. Every year, my family gathered here, and every year I played the same role, the reliable one, the responsible one, the daughter who never caused trouble and never asked for too much, the one who could always be counted on to fix things quietly in the background. My older sister, Marissa, was the star. At 24, she was everything my parents admired: loud, confident, athletic. She had a way of making everyone feel like she was their favorite person in the world, right before she asked them for something. People gravitated toward her naturally. She knew how to command a room without even trying. I was the opposite. I blended in. I observed. I cleaned up messes no one else wanted to acknowledge. Marissa was standing at the edge of the old wooden dock, a can of beer dangling loosely from her fingers, telling some exaggerated story to our cousins. Everyone was laughing. Her voice carried easily over the water. I wasn't part of the conversation. I was just walking past, heading toward the cooler. I wanted a soda. That was it. I wasn't looking for attention. I wasn't looking for a fight. "Hey, Alejandra," she called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through the noise. I pretended not to hear her and reached into the cooler. She stepped directly into my path. I looked up and there it was, that familiar smirk, the one that always meant trouble. "Thinking about all that money Grandma left you?" she asked casually, like she was commenting on the weather. That was her favorite subject. Not our inheritance. Mine. I didn't answer. I tried to step around her, but she placed a hand flat against my chest, stopping me. "You're always so serious," she said, shaking her head. "You really need to loosen up." Before I could react, before I could even process what she was doing, she shoved me. Hard. 1 second I was standing on solid wood. The next, the world tilted violently. The lake swallowed me whole. The cold was instant and brutal, like being punched in the lungs. My breath vanished. I went under, disoriented, my arms flailing uselessly as panic surged through my body. I surfaced sputtering, gasping, my hair plastered to my face, heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. The water was shockingly cold, stealing the strength from my limbs. I tried to tread water, but a sharp pain shot through my shoulder, the same shoulder I'd injured years ago and never quite healed. Then I heard it. Laughter. I looked toward the dock, water dripping from my eyelashes. Marissa was bent over, pointing at me, laughing like she'd just told the funniest joke of her life. "Don't be so dramatic," she yelled. I turned toward the porch. My parents were standing there, my mother and father, watching, smiling. They weren't calling for help. They weren't moving toward the water. They were just observing, like this was entertainment, like this was normal. A wave of panic crashed over me as my head dipped under again. My lungs burned. The cold tightened around my chest. I kicked desperately, fighting my way toward the shore. I wasn't being dramatic. I was struggling. When I finally dragged myself onto the grass, shaking and soaked, no one rushed over. No one asked if I was okay. Marissa just laughed harder. "It was a joke," she said. "God, you're so sensitive." Something inside me snapped, but not loudly, not in a way anyone else could hear. It was quiet, final. Later, wrapped in a damp towel in the back seat of the car, I stared out the window as the air conditioning blasted against my skin. My breathing had evened out, but my chest still felt tight, like the cold had lodged itself somewhere deep inside me. Marissa sat in the front seat, humming along to the radio, completely unbothered. My parents talked about stopping at the grocery store on the way home. It was as if nothing had happened. For me, everything had. As the car rolled down the highway, memories surfaced, unwanted and relentless. I was 16 again, standing proudly next to my first car, a beat-up sedan I'd bought with money from my after-school job. A week later, Marissa took it without asking and wrapped it around a telephone pole. My mother had pulled me aside afterward, her voice soft and pleading. "She made a mistake, Alejandra. She feels terrible. Be a good sister." I paid for the repairs. Marissa never said thank you. I remembered my 20th birthday. I'd wanted a quiet dinner. Instead, I spent the evening wiring $5,000 to Marissa in Las Vegas because she'd hit a rough patch. My father clapped me on the shoulder afterward. "That's my girl," he said. "Always responsible. Family helps family." My grandmother had seen everything. She was my mother's mother, a quiet, observant woman who built a successful business from nothing. A few months before she died, she sat me down in her workshop, the smell of sawdust thick in the air. "Money is a tool, Alejandra," she told me. "It can build something solid, or it can become a crutch." When she passed, she left the bulk of her estate to me. My family never forgave me for that. That night, alone in my room, the chill still clinging to my skin, I stared at the ceiling and finally allowed myself to admit the truth I'd been avoiding for years. I wasn't loved for who I was valued for what I provided. And as laughter drifted up from downstairs, I realized the lake wasn't the worst thing they'd ever pushed me into. It was just the moment I finally stopped swimming for their approval. The days after the lake blurred together in a way that felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. My family acted as if nothing had happened, which somehow hurt more than if they'd yelled or apologized badly. At least anger would have acknowledged that something real had occurred. Instead, everything went back to normal. My mother asked if I wanted eggs in the morning, as if she hadn't watched me gasp for air days earlier. My father asked if I could help him move some boxes in the garage. Marissa borrowed my phone charger and didn't even look me in the eye. They spoke to me the way you speak to a dependable appliance, something you assume will always work as long as you press the right buttons. I moved through the house quietly, answering in short sentences, keeping my head down. On the outside, I looked calm. On the inside, something was hardening, cooling, setting. The real breaking point didn't come with shouting or tears. It came on a Thursday night, just past 10. I was heading downstairs for a glass of water when I heard voices drifting from the living room. My parents. Their tones were low, urgent. I paused halfway down the stairs, hidden by the shadows, the banister cool under my fingers. "She hasn't said more than 2 words in days," my mother said, irritation creeping into her voice. "This silent treatment is ridiculous." "She'll get over it," my father replied with a dismissive grunt. "She always does." A pause. "We can't afford for her to get over it right now," my mother snapped. My stomach tightened. "Marissa needs the down payment for that MBA program by the end of the month. $50,000. Did you forget?" My father sighed. "Of course I didn't forget. But what do you want me to do? She's an adult. We can't just take Alejandra's money." Another pause, longer this time. Then my mother's voice dropped, conspiratorial. "I talked to my sister today, Carol." My blood ran cold. "Her husband's construction business is having cash flow issues," my mother continued. "Temporary ones. What if we told Alejandra we were in trouble, that the business is on the verge of collapsing, that we need her to co-sign a loan to save it?" I gripped the railing harder. "She'd never agree to that," my father said. "She would if we frame it right," my mother replied without hesitation. "We make it about family, about responsibility, about keeping a roof over our heads. We get the loan, give Marissa the $50,000, and we figure the rest out later." There it was, plain and ugly. "She has to help her sister," my mother finished. "It's the right thing to do." I felt nauseous. This wasn't carelessness, it wasn't entitlement, it was a plan. They weren't just taking advantage of me anymore. They were preparing to lie, manipulate, and legally trap me in debt to fund Marissa's life and save themselves. I backed away silently, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. I retreated to my room, closed the door, and slid down until my back hit the floor. For a long time, I just sat there staring at nothing. It's one thing to realize your family takes you for granted. It's another to realize they're capable of conspiring against you. The next day, I met my boyfriend Evan for coffee. We'd been together for about a year. He was smart, ambitious, charming, in an easy way that made people trust him quickly. I'd always thought he was on my side, that he saw me. I told him everything. The lake, the years of financial pressure, the conversation I'd overheard on the stairs. I waited for him to react. He stirred his lattes slowly, brow furrowed. "Wow," he said finally. "That's a lot." "A lot?" I repeated. "They're planning to lie to me, to trap me in a loan." "Well," he said carefully, avoiding my eyes, "maybe not trap you. Maybe they're just desperate, and it's just a signature, right? For family." I stared at him, You don't want to be the one who breaks up your family over money, he added. Think about what people would say. What people would say. In that moment, something crystallized with terrifying clarity. To Evan, my inheritance wasn't a burden I carried. It was a feature. The nice dinners, the weekend trips, the stability. My pain was just an inconvenience. I have to go, I said, standing so abruptly the table rattled. That night, I called my best friend Natalie. She'd known me since kindergarten. She'd watched my family dynamic unfold for years, without ever sugarcoating it. They laughed, she said, her voice low with fury after I finished telling her everything. They laughed? She was at my house 15 minutes later, greasy takeout in hand. We sat on my bed, the familiar comfort of her presence grounding me. This isn't just about the lake, she said quietly. You know that, right? I nodded. They don't see you as a daughter, she continued. They see you as a resource, and now they're planning to lie to you to keep draining you. Her words hit harder than anything else had. Have you ever felt loved by them without conditions? She asked gently, without needing to give something first? I tried to think of an answer. I couldn't. After she left, I stared at my phone for a long time before dialing a number she'd sent me. Rachel Hargrove, attorney. Her office was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, another world entirely. She listened to my story without interrupting, her expression unreadable as she took notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Alejandra, she said calmly, the assets your grandmother left you are yours. You have no legal obligation to support your sister, your parents, or anyone else. She paused. What you overheard borders on conspiracy to commit fraud. The words settled heavily, but they also lifted something off my chest. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting emotionally. I was thinking strategically. I left her office with grief still aching inside me, but now it was paired with something new. Clarity. They had pushed me into the lake, expecting me to flail and eventually comply. They had no idea I was about to stop swimming altogether. The 2 weeks after my meeting with Rachel were the quietest of my life, and the most intense. On the surface, I became the version of myself my family preferred. The agreeable one, the easy one. I answered my mother's questions about my day. I helped my father clean out the garage. I let Marissa beat me at video games and laughed when she mocked my lack of coordination. I was playing a role, and I had never been better at it. Inside, though, a storm was taking shape. Methodical, deliberate. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was planning. My first move was small, almost invisible. One evening at dinner, I let out a heavy sigh and pushed my food around my plate. I got some bad news today, I said casually. My mother's fork froze midair. What kind of bad news? That tech stock I invested in? I shrugged. It tanked. I lost a significant amount. I'm going to have to be really careful with money for a while. The reaction was immediate. My mother's face went pale. How much did you lose? A lot, I said vaguely. Marissa scoffed. You're joking, right? What about my MBA? I don't think I can help with that right now, I replied evenly. The concern wasn't for me, not even a flicker. It was pure panic. You can't just gamble away money your grandmother left you, my mother snapped. That money was meant to secure this family's future. The hypocrisy was almost impressive. That was all the confirmation I needed. The next day, I began building my arc. The $50,000 my parents expected to hand over to Marissa sat in a high-yield savings account under my name. It had always been my money, set aside out of obligation, not generosity. Rachel helped me redirect it. Together we established a private scholarship foundation. The paperwork was clean, legal, irrevocable. The money was donated, transferred, repurposed. We named it the Conley Scholarship Foundation. While Rachel handled the legal structure, I handled my escape. I quietly sent my design portfolio to agencies in a city 3 states away, somewhere anonymous, somewhere I had no history. Within 2 weeks, I had a Zoom interview. 3 days later, a job offer followed. I accepted immediately. I opened a new bank account my family knew nothing about. I found a small apartment online and paid the deposit. At night, I packed my belongings 1 box at a time, hiding them in the back of my closet. Then my family staged their final act. My mother announced a special family dinner. She cooked my favorite meal, roast chicken, rosemary potatoes, candles on the table. It felt theatrical. My father cleared his throat. My mother clasped her hands. We're in trouble, she said, tears welling perfectly. She slid a stack of papers across the table. Alone, my father said, just a signature. Marissa leaned back in her chair. Time to be an adult, little sister. I looked at the papers. Then I stood up. No, I said quietly. The silence was deafening. I walked upstairs, grabbed my packed bags, and left without looking back. 3 days later, Marissa went to the bank. The account was closed. The money was gone. And the letter explaining why arrived the next morning. I wasn't there to see their faces, but I can imagine them. The shock, the rage, the understanding that the power they'd relied on was gone. I was already driving toward my new life. The fallout began before I even finished unpacking my boxes. My phone buzzed nonstop on the drive to my new city, screen lighting up with names I wasn't ready to see anymore. I let it ring. Every time. When I finally stopped for gas and checked my voicemail, I listened to only one message, my mother's. Her voice was tight, trembling in a way I'd heard before. Not fear, performance. Alejandra, honey, something's wrong. There's been a terrible mistake. Please call us. We're so worried. This isn't you. I deleted it. Marissa's messages came next. A stream of furious texts riddled with spelling errors and rage. Where is my money? You ruined everything. You think this is funny? You're dead to me. My father left a single voicemail. Call your mother. You've upset her. That was it. No question about where I was. No concern for my safety. Just the expectation of obedience. I sat in my car, engine idling, and finally did something I should have done years ago. I blocked their numbers. All of them, including Evan. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was expansive, like taking a full breath after years of breathing shallow. A few days later, an unknown number got through. I hesitated, then answered. Alejandra, sweetie, my Aunt Carol cooed. Your mom is beside herself. Why don't you come home so we can talk this out? Families fix things together. I knew what she really meant. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about the money my parents owed her. I'm fine, I said calmly. There's nothing to fix. Then I hung up and blocked her too. Their next move came exactly as Rachel had predicted. One evening, a knock echoed through my apartment. My heart jumped until I looked through the peephole and saw 2 police officers. They were professional, polite. We received a welfare check request, one said. Your family said they were concerned. I smiled. I'm 22, I said. I moved here for work. I'm safe, and I don't wish to have contact with them. I showed proof. They nodded. They left. That door closed forever. 6 months passed. 6 months of quiet healing. My job challenged me in ways that had nothing to do with sacrifice. My coworkers saw me as capable, not useful. I started physical therapy for my shoulder and therapy for everything else. One afternoon, an email arrived. It was from my cousin Lucy. She'd seen everything at the lake. She apologized. She told me my parents were drowning in debt and Marissa was working at a call center now. I wasn't surprised. I was relieved. A year later, a letter arrived from a nursing student, the first recipient of the Conley Scholarship. She thanked an anonymous donor for giving her hope. I folded the letter and smiled. Walking away wasn't cruelty. It was survival. And for the first time, I was free.